please welcome to the show the amazing, the resplendent Regena Thomashauer, also known as Mama Gena. And this is normally when we cue the music and she comes on stage in feather boas and 6-inch platforms, performing for thousands of women in churches and stadiums and theaters across America. So Regena, I am so honored to have this conversation with you right now. I am so honored to be your roommate.
How much fun do we have?
I think we put the fun in fun. And I am so curious as to what inspired you to go blazing into the darkness of the patriarchy, lit really only by the light of your own pussy, just forging the way, helping women to discover their own turn on. And so why isn't everyone tuning into their own turn on? And how did you start?
Like back in the day.
Back in the day.
Okay, back in the day. I think the thing the thing that distinguished me was probably that I was like the most turned off person you could ever dream or imagine. I mean, like so many women on this planet, I had abuse in my family lineage, and that was, just part of how I was raised, and it was just what was happening. And so many women experience such like. So it didn't particularly, I wasn't unique in that regard.
Yeah, they're saying now it's 1 in 4 humans deal with some sort of sexual abuse. Like before we thought 1 in 4 women, but now I think as men are getting braver to say, and some homophobic stigmas are hopefully falling away, that it's 1 in 4 humans deal with some level.
A huge amount. And so with this kind of pattern inside my body, I can remember literally like the day. I was literally about 5 or 6 years old because I was a very enthusiastic little girl.
Shocking.
And I remember there was a day when I woke up and I was like, oh my God, like my enthusiasm is gone. And I remember looking out the window and thinking to myself, like, what is going on in a world that would take the enthusiasm away from a child, or some 5-year-old version of that thought?
Okay.
And
like you had your enthusiasm, something happened.
Something.
You noticed, you had the consciousness to know it was gone.
And then right around that time, I started to have an experience at night when I was going to bed that the goddess would come and she would sit on the bed next to me, like by my pillow. And I could just feel this aliveness and this radiance and this beauty. And it was just this sensation. It was like butterscotch all over my being.
Butterscotch flavored goddess. It's the new candle by Regena Thomashauer.
Totally. And I would turn my head because I wanted to see her because I could feel that she was so beautiful. And then she would vanish. And so I thought, whoa, okay. And just as I thought, well, that must mean that she lives where we can't quite see her, but she must be somewhere. So I started to look for her. And I asked my friends to take me into their churches because I was Jewish and I knew she wasn't in the synagogue. And so I went to different churches, or Russian Orthodox, Catholic Church, to a Muslim shrine that my friend took me to. Like, I went everywhere over the years, and I couldn't find her. I was like, that's wrong. She's got to be somewhere. But eventually I gave up the search.
So really quick pause, commercial break. When I was 5 years old, and I can't believe we've never had this conversation. When I was 5 years old, I went to my mom in the kitchen in Tallahassee, Florida, and I was like, Mom, how do we know we're Baptist? And she's like, what do you mean, 5-year-old child? I was like, how do we know we're Baptist? Like, were we born Baptist? Were we like trained Baptist? Did we choose it? And I was like, I don't know about you, but like what's happening in there does not feel like it to me. Like, like your best friend is Buddhist, and that guy in church says that she's gonna burn in hell because she's not accepted Jesus Christ as her savior, and that's your best friend, and I love her. I can't get on board with that.
Right.
And so she let me go to the Jewish synagogue and the Church of Latter-day Saints
No way,
and the
Emily
Catholic.
Stella Fletcher.
Yeah, so I started checking out the other stuff.
Oh my God. And isn't that incredible? Like, because literally I can remember my 8-year-old friend, Susan Murphy, and when I asked her mother to take me to church, because I was certain that the goddess was in Catholic churches because of Christmas. I thought if there's got to be, like, they have like Christmas lights and ornaments. It's the goddess. It's definitely
presents.
Has to be there, right? But and so she was like really questioning me. Like, it's, I guess now we have to assume that it is not uncommon for children to be so spiritually alive and in tune that they can kind of plug into a bigger truth almost than the party line. And I love that you were questioning that.
What do you mean by the party line?
The party line meaning like, well, we're Jewish, so everybody's Jewish. So Jews and you're,
Christian or Southern Baptist.
Christian, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I love that you kind of opened the question to your family. Your mother was amazing to let you go.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told my mother I was doing that. I was just like, whatever, I'm going over to Susan's house or whatever I said. I don't think I was transparent. I knew I'd get in trouble for searching
because
for the
she
goddess.
didn't want you to find it outside of Judaism.
I think it just didn't occur to anybody in my lineage that there was anything such as outside Judaism.
And what about the concept of goddess? Was that,
God.
How did you even come up with that idea at 5?
No, it wasn't that I came up with the idea. It's that the goddess came and sat on my bed. Like she was there.
But how did you know to call it goddess?
Because I could feel the radiant splendor of her, which is kind of, and now I look back on it, I'm like, how'd you know there was a goddess? It was just like some kind of 5-year-old fantasy. Like, what the hell was that? But here's where, let's say, that 5-year-old fantasy, when fast forward, right? Because I did search for the goddess in many temples, religious practices. I was deeply longing to find a different sense of spirituality than the one in which I was raised. And I gave up the search. But then, after I kind of withered on the vine as a young woman, really unable to function in my 20s because of the hurt and the pain in my body, my despair at being so disenfranchised and disconnected from my feminine, the woman I was. I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't feel any confidence. Like I could not. How could I set foot on the stage if I didn't know who the fuck I was? So I ended up auditioning for something called the Actors Information Project, where they, it's like a school for actors. And they told me, they were like, Regina, you're a really good actor, but you have absolutely no connection with your turn-on or your sexuality. And you will be cast in roles 10 or 20 years older than you if you don't get that connection. And I was like, I don't want to. Why do I want to be connected to that? Okay, all right, for my art, all right, fine. And then I was like, is there a class I could take?
And why do you think you didn't want to be connected to it? Because it was associated with abuse?
Yeah, and I think because I was so lost in that area. I just was, I couldn't receive love. Like I had this great boyfriend in college, but I couldn't let his love in. It felt so, I just didn't have an ability to let love in because it was so different than my childhood experience. So I ended up taking a class recommended by an acting teacher called Basic Sensuality, given by a school that was called Moore University. First of all, I was so terrified to go to this class. So I just want to say, if there's anybody listening to this who feels that perhaps they're not in harmony with their sensuality, that they feel maybe they're kind of limping along in relationship to their sense of their own sexual aliveness or a sense of comfort in that arena, I just want to say you are not alone. I have so been there. This patriarchal world culture does repress and disenfranchise women in the most powerful way around connection to our bodies and our sensuality. So I was so shut down, but being shut down is only just a great starting place. And for me, I was so terrified to go to the class. So I go to the class and I think, oh no, these are a bunch of aging hippies and they are so weird and I have to run home. So I ran home and I thought if I stay home, my life will never change. So I ran back to the class, did the rest of the day, and they gave a homework assignment. which was to create a pleasurable experience for yourself that night. And I never did anything like that, because I knew how to take care of my family, my job, the customers at the restaurant I was working at. Like, I knew how to take care of other people, but I didn't know how to take care of myself or at my pleasure. I never thought about it. So I'm this shy, repressed, celibate creature that's been like living, this life of researching ancient goddess traditions and waiting tables and not dating for many years. And I'm going to my deli to pick up some flowers and some chocolate-covered almonds and some Pellegrino for my big night to celebrate me. And I'm at the deli, and instead of being invisible, suddenly the deli guy is like, can I help you with the flowers? Can I help you choose the color? And I'm like, why are they paying attention to me? And then I thought, oh, because I'm just stepping into doing something. There must be something I'm putting out differently by virtue of the fact that I am attending to my pleasure for the first time in my life since I was a little kid, probably.
Wow.
And that night, I had this crazy experience because you know how you do, I put on the music, I set out my little snacks, I vacuumed, I took a bath. And when I got out of the bathtub, and when you have an experience of pleasure, it changes the space-time continuum. When you set the stage for pleasure, it changes time and space. And suddenly I could feel like, whoa, I'm in the present moment. And it's infinite here. And in that place, I looked at myself in the mirror because that was part of the homework. You had to look at yourself in the mirror. And I looked at myself in the mirror in this vortex of having had a bath and created all this beauty for myself. And I looked at my own reflection. I was like, motherfucker, that's where the goddess has been hiding. Inside of me, but not just inside of me. She must be hiding inside of every woman, because I felt that same butterscotch feeling when looking into my own eyes. I was like, whoa, pleasure's the portal to ignite the divine inside the female body. And whoa. And I thought, I need to tell every woman. I have to figure this shit out on my own. And then I need to tell every woman, because this is game changing. If women knew they were goddesses, they would not put up with all that shit. The world would change. Really, it was the defining moment. And the first thing I wanted to do was tell everyone.
So things I want to underline and double click, which feels so outrageously important. It feels like the key to manifesting. It feels like the key to tapping into your own divinity. So you said pleasure changes the space-time continuum.
Yes.
And is that because of the presence that happens, or can you say more about that?
From what I understand of the science, right? When you have a pleasurable experience, you're turning on all of those neurotransmitters inside yourself, and including beta endorphin, prolactin. Let's say when you're in a state, like most of us, where we're highly stressed and thinking about the to-do list or all the things that we haven't done, your body is awash in cortisol. And so when you reverse that, you deliberately create pleasure, you change your chemistry, which, wouldn't you say that is the outcome of meditation as well?
100%.
And so pleasure was almost like instantly shifts you into that place where you are here now. You are where eternity lives. From like meditating, like how would you describe that shift where pleasure literally alters reality, literally? And it is the key to the cortisons, how they manifest it. It's the key to how we create our longings and desires. It's the key to feminine power, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I want to talk more about cortisons, but I'll say, because I think it's a really important thing to link the meditation and the manifesting power of pleasure, because you're absolutely right. What meditation's doing is getting rid of the adrenaline and cortisol. We're letting that dopamine and serotonin start to flow, which puts you into the present moment, which, like you said, like the present moment is the future in the making. It's why I always teach manifesting after meditation, when you change that neurochemistry of your brain.
Right.
What I found now that I'm starting to dance in the worlds of pleasure is that you're taking that same phenomenon, but you are turning up the dial and you're speeding up the rate with which you can shift reality, because it feels like the expansiveness of the pleasure is increasing. And also when you put oxytocin and norepinephrine and adrenaline on top of the dopamine and serotonin, it's like it's a more powerful bliss and pleasure cocktail.
Yeah.
So it's like it speeds up the magnetism of the thing, of whatever it is that you're looking to draw in.
Yeah.
It makes you more magnetic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's also, I look at it as less a way to create an outcome and more as a way to connect so powerfully with your inner divinity that you can allow yourself to surrender to, what you want is part of it, but what is wanted from you by that which is greater than you. Yeah. Because it's almost like in that place, it's not about, it's about being open to surrendering to sometimes even more than you could have imagined. I think oftentimes even more than you could have imagined for yourself, because we're also limited by what we could dream.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. And I agree with you. And I think that there is a stage in someone's manifesting career or someone's pleasure career, like where you trust nature enough.
Yeah.
And that you're like, yes, please use me. And I think oftentimes when people are starting, and at least the way that I try to lure people into meditation and manifesting and pleasure work, it's like, hey, you know that thing you want?
Yeah.
You know that girl you want to date, that raise you want? Hey, this is one way that you can start to make yourself more magnetic.
Yeah.
And then the good news, spoiler alert, like a couple years down the track, once this stuff is substantiated and this is your new baseline, that you can really, and yes, there's certainly a level of surrender happening all the time because nature is working through us all the time. But we love our illusion of control. So
it's so true. And it's fun actually, once you can kind of get a handle on that energy, just play with the universe. Like, I proclaim myself like I'm spot queen. Like if there's a parking spot to be found, this queen's going to get it.
Yes.
And I always do. Knock on wood, thank you, Jesus. But, or as my people would do, because you don't ever want to, declare. But I think that, it's like it becomes like a game of both longing and surrendering. And that is such a pleasurable way to live your life, connecting to your desires and allowing them to work you. And you play back with your continued showing up with your radiance and your aliveness.
I love the way you use the term radiance. And something I'd love to have you clarify is because I've been teaching manifesting for a long time. And I would say that the number one thing that people say to me is, Emily, I don't know what I want. Emily, I don't know what I want. Yeah. And so, in working with you and discovering more of your brilliance through, Pleasure Boot Camp and your amazing book, Pussy, a Reclamation, and just the beautiful body of work that you've created for myself, I feel like as I get more in touch with my body, as I start to turn up the volume on my own desire physically and sexually and sensually, I'm more attuned to my desires externally. But I'm curious if you've seen that phenomenon happen with your students over the years.
Yeah, totally. The first thing that, women will say to me when they come to my classes, I don't know what I want. And I think there's three parts relating to a woman's desire. And I want to say that desire, we have such mixed feelings because we don't want to be greedy and we don't want to appear too material, that we're longing for things, but although some people long for world peace or clean, unbelievable environment for ourselves, our children. But when you talk about desire, it's my belief that desire is the interface between you and that which is greater than you. Like you have desires that are uniquely yours. I have desires that are uniquely mine. And it is almost as if we are the human housing to allow that desire to exist on this planet in our lifetime by standing for it. And women back away from our desires because we don't know what we want. Because as soon as we know what we want, then we think, oh God, I have no idea how to get it. How am I going to get this? Oh God, I can't. I better not even want it because I don't know how. And then the third way is once we actually get the desire, we can't have it. Like we can't have it. We just like are like, oh, no, that's too much. I cannot.
We don't believe we deserve it.
No, we don't. We push it away.
And do you think that that's true of all genders or specifically women?
Well, I tend to think that women really see. We have this. We create life, right? And I think it's really woman's desire that rules the world.
Say more about that.
I mean, I think men want things and they desire things. And I think that a woman's desire can trump a man's desire and actually hold even more for him than he could long for himself. I think a woman's vision for her man, her sons, can only enhance what he longs for because she can see his king. So, you know, and if you look at it, like desire it's super simple. If you don't want to have sex with your boyfriend, that shit is not going to happen. But if your boyfriend says, no, I'm not in the mood to have sex tonight, you know you can trump his ass. And you know you can get him to, engage with you sensually in that way. And men can't do that with us. They don't have the power to change our minds.
Okay, so interesting. So you think that women not knowing what they want is because the desire is so powerful?
I think that it's we haven't been encouraged
to listen,
to pay attention to our longings. We've been encouraged to take care of our husbands, take care of our families, take care of our bosses, but we haven't been taught. I mean, did your mom ever say to you, "Oh, Emily, what do you long for, baby? I want to jump on that train. How can we make sure that every single one of your desires comes true? How can we support?" Most of our families didn't know how to support those kinds of conversations. And, it was more of trying to push us into tracks that were already laid down rather than the unique track that was ours to live in our lifetime.
Yes, you mentioned earlier that the courtesan, that their desire is how they were able to manifest what they were. And so one, I'd love to know what a courtesan is, how you would define a courtesan. And then two, I think it'd be fun to share about our monthly ritual of the courtesan chamber. And I think a bit of that you have designed and facilitated, that you very kindly invited me in. and
now you are a co-creator.
And now we co-created together, yeah. So let's start there. And then I think it'd be fun also to tell our origin story of how we
great. I would love that.
Connected.
I think that, let's say, to begin the courtesan story, like why I love courtesans, I did live and work at Moore University for many years. And then when I left them and went out on my own, I knew I wanted to teach. And so I started to make up all these different courses. But then when I had Maggie...
Your daughter.
My daughter, right. I felt such a sense of responsibility to what was I doing for the girls of today who would be the women tomorrow, what was I doing to make sure the world could handle who and what a woman is? And I thought, well, I have to start with women because we as women don't even know how to handle ourselves. We don't know we're beautiful. We don't know that we have divinity within us. We don't know how to cultivate or practice being a woman. So I thought I want to do something. So I decided that I'll start a school. And where I got this idea was I was watching a movie called Dangerous Beauty. And it was about a courtesan and her mom. And it was about how it was a mother to daughter would teach the young woman how to cultivate all the arts of being a woman for the purpose of having her be able to make her way in the world with her attraction and with her desire. And so she was cultivated and she became counsel to kings and worked closely with all of the gentlemen who were in power and consulted and were amused and inspiring these guys. And she was able to be educated. She was able to own her own money. She was able to have freedom in ways that most women were not. It was a time when women were property. And so I was so intrigued by this, that there was a way that women, when there were no rights, when we had nothing, a woman owned her power. And I thought, how did that happen? And I saw this lineage taking place where the mother said to the daughter, as she was giving her a bath, and she said, if you want to give pleasure, you must know pleasure. And I thought, whoa, women don't know pleasure. I have to start a courtesan academy in New York City. I'll call it Mama Gena School of Womanly Arts because I just had a baby, and Maggie was so little, and boom, I wrote my first course, and I started to really study the arts and practice of being a woman and researched the courtesans. And courtesans, you don't want to confuse them with prostitutes, right? It wasn't about laying down your body to serve a man. That was, of course, there were sexual experiences exchanged, but it was actually the courtesans, it was a more transcendent experience. Courtesans could cultivate themselves with all of the graces of charm, timing, wit. They invested in their own beauty. They didn't have to be beautiful, but they learned how to cultivate themselves. And I was so inspired by this because actually what happened was the women's movement killed the courtesan, because what happened, of course, was every woman saw the freedom of the courtesans and they were like, we need to fight and reclaim our power in this world. And then we had the women's movement, which was born from anger, very rightly so. But all of those feminine practices got shut down as a result of that.
Like as a result of us trying to be more masculine in a hyper-masculine world. So then we squelched the femininity and these ancient goddess practices.
And it was necessary at that time
Yeah.
to just break through and get the right to vote, for example.
Right.
But we are not in that paradigm anymore. And so I thought, what happens if we as women learn how to connect to our pleasure, how to stand in that paradigm that changes time and space, and how to power up through the feminine rather than the masculine, which is so very different. And so that's when my relationship with the courtesans began. And I started to research and teach women about courtesans, because they could literally, we talk about manifesting. This is how powerful. A courtesan, they were always impoverished. That's how every courtesan's story began. But with her attention to her turn on, for example, there was a courtesan named Marie Duplessis. She's working in a sweatshop, walking across the Pont Neuf Bridge, she's starving. She smells some French fries. Now, a woman might smell French fries after a really long day's work, and she could think, I wish I didn't have any money for the French fries. It's so disturbing and upsetting. Oh, God. But not Marie Duplessis, because she understood about pleasure. She stood there, inhaling the fragrance, filled with longing for the French fry, enjoying the fumes, and a gentleman crossing the bridge in a carriage stopped, purchased her a cone of French fries. 6 months later, he saw her at the Opera Garnier, and she was already one of the most sought-after courtesans. And that's the power that you're describing, that manifesting through pleasure that can break the space-time continuum and shift worlds through the power of a woman's desire, powered by turn on.
So this to me seems like the reason, why, we'll talk later about why isn't everyone
turning
into tuning
tuning in
into their own turn on.
Yes.
But now, like, I would like, why? I mean, you're doing all of everything you've said so far is like, feels like a beautiful campaign of like why we would want to find our own turn on. But I imagine there are people listening that maybe haven't had sex in years, that maybe don't have a self-pleasure practice, that maybe, like you said, I wouldn't know how to make a pleasurable experience for myself.
Exactly.
Like, why would someone want to turn themselves on?
Turn on, if you think about it, it's life force. Everybody exists because there was an orgasm somewhere. And so it's the elemental life force. And we, as women, because we have been living in a patriarchal culture that disparages the feminine, where we are ignored or abused, or so many experiences can happen with women that are so deeply hurtful, so difficult to recover from, or to recover one's own sense of one's own aliveness. Especially, women learn to compromise before we learn to come.
That feels like a chapter of a new book. Women learn to compromise before we learn to come.
So it's sometimes you can't even find that little wild child that was alive in you when you were 2 or 3 years old and doing pirouettes on the living room floor, and in that state of ecstatic bliss. You can't remember that person ever existed inside your body and your being. So there's so much resistance, not to mention so much fear, because when people hear the word turn on, they think that means I have to have sex with somebody. It does not mean that at all. It means that you have to connect to your experience of pleasure as an alive being. But pleasure and sexuality is those are scary places, especially if you've experienced any kind of abuse in your life. So there's so many reasons not to turn on. Not to mention, you get in trouble, if you were feeling turned on, and girls get hit on in uncomfortable ways when they're vulnerable. I mean, I learned to turn myself off, and I think so many of us do. So the trick, and why I really started the school for and about women, is because women can learn to cultivate their turn on in the safety of sisterhood first, before they take it out in the world and experience, how can I use this power that I have in a way that takes everyone higher, including me, and feel safe doing it. So it takes some practice. It's like, it's just like going to the gym, though. If you're consistent, you can learn to do a push-up or 2 or 3 after a few weeks of practicing,
And I love that you are starting with women, but in your bio, you say, that when people of all genders experience the magnificence of the divine feminine, that this will liberate us from the patriarchal construct that is really hurting all of us, all genders.
Yeah. And I think that we as women have to lead this. It's not like one day it will be safe for us to breathe free. It's like we have to create a world that is safe, and you cannot do that unless you're plugged into your turn on.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, just even thinking of my own experience, like growing up, I was moved to New York when I was 15 to model.
So crazy.
Which is crazy.
What an adventurer you were.
I was a child, and also got sent home because I was too fat. I was like 110 pounds and 5'9", but then moved back to New York wanting to perform on Broadway. And so in the audition room, my job was to be like as sexy as possible, like as beautiful and sexy and wanted as possible. But then I would walk out of the audition room and be on the streets of New York City as a 22-year-old single woman. And I remember actively like gaining weight, wearing clothes, like making this insular protective layer around me.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't want all of that unwanted sexual attention.
Yes.
And then now I'm 44 and I'm like, hey, everybody, I'm like really turning it on. Like,
hello, Whole Foods. Look, Emily's here.
But I think because the unwanted attention slows down, it does actually feel safer for me to inhabit more of my sexual energy.
I think it's, well, first of all, you're so gorgeous.
Thanks.
And I'm sure you're even more gorgeous now than you were at 22. And I feel also that you can handle it now because you are so much more inside of your sensual aliveness that you feel confident of your yes and confident of your no. And that is a journey that when a woman connects to pussy, It's when we're disconnected from pussy that we can't say yes or no and mean it.
Because we don't know what we want and we don't feel safe enough to own our no.
That is right. And so when we connect to our sensual aliveness and learn our bodies, that's when you can actually say, dude, I could see you hitting on me and I get it, but like back away.
I get it. I am gorgeous, but no, thank you.
But we don't give our children that education, which is terrifying, actually. I think sex ed is like an area that we need so much enlightenment.
I mean, from your lips to goddess's ears. I've been getting this download for years now, which is like Tantra for teens, Tantra for teens. And I'm like, oh, no.
I know. I hear you.
I mean, please, someone listening. Can you please take
it will
this?
Come. It will come.
Okay.
It will come.
But we don't teach them. I do think consent is changing. I do think consent culture is starting to be a thing.
Yeah.
I do think younger generations, that is part of the vernacular.
Yeah.
But really learning like what is the profundity of it. All we're taught is like it's bad, it's wrong. We're taught to be scared of it, but not even taught the power of it.
Right. And
so this feels like to me like part of your life's mission of like, why aren't we tuning into our turn on? And it's like because you are so aware of the power of it. You're so in reverence to it.
Oh my goodness. And my first book was called Mama Gena School of Womanly Arts. It's a great book. And when it came out, I went on book tour and I met this little red-haired 15-year-old chick in Miami. And I was like, you're so young. What are you doing here? I say pussy in my book. Why are you at the book signing? And she said, well, it's because it's the first book I ever read where I could tell from reading it that you were a woman who loved herself. And I'm in high school and we all hate ourselves in high school. And so I just wanted to hear that sound of your self-love. It changed me. And so she and I became like pen pals over the years. So fast forward like 5 years later or something, she tells me she lost her virginity. I'm like, oh my God, tell me everything. How was that? And she said, well, because she read all the books that I wrote. She's like, I was able to actually tell this boy what I wanted and how I wanted to be touched. And my first time was amazing. And I was just like, oh my God, it made me so happy because like that was my wish. What because I think that's why I started with women, because moms have to educate our daughters. Our daughters get to educate themselves. All of this used to be passed mother to daughter, pre-patriarchy. And it's time. We can reignite that and change the generations.
Okay, so let's talk courtesan chamber a little bit. And then I want to take it back. Like, what is patriarchy? What is goddess practice?
Okay.
Like, I want to go deep into your like ancient goddess research.
Okay, great. I'm so happy to do that. All right. So I don't know, this is about maybe 3 years ago. I had, or 3 or 4, I don't know, something like that. I had stopped teaching live events, and I thought really what I want to do is like fill up, because as a facilitator and a teacher, I was constantly in the give, taking care of people, and so thrilled to do that, delighted. But I was feeling like emptied and like I needed to be filled. And so I was just thinking about like, if I was a courtesan, what would I do?
And that's a great question. If I was a courtesan, what would I do?
And
WWCD.
Yeah.
What would courtesan do?
What would courtesan do? So I thought, well, they gave these parties, right? And for themselves. And in fact, there was this one courtesan named Paiva, and she actually has she had one of her lovers bought her this palace that's still on the Champs-Élysées to this day. It's now the Gentleman's Club, but you can go. I think one day a week you're allowed to have a tour of Paiva's palace, where she has an onyx bathtub with 3 taps, one for hot and cold water, one for donkey milk, which was thought to be youthening, and the third was for champagne. so she could sit in the tub.
Let's just rewind. A bathtub made of onyx with 3 taps.
Yes.
Champagne, milk, and
Hot and cold water.
hot and cold water. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this kind of thing, like where a woman was really thinking into the detail. And I thought,
really committing to pleasure.
yeah, committing big time. And I thought, why don't I throw a party? I could throw a courtesan party. And so I gathered my girlfriends because I'm so blessed to have girlfriends who are in the field of education of sensuality and sexuality and so forth, including you. And so we got together and we made, I described what I was longing for. And there was this space that we found this Airbnb that had all these hot tubs in it. And
and a lot of beds and a swing in the kitchen.
I know, it was a really unique space. And I thought, great, let's rent that shit for us. We'll have a party. And then I thought, well, what courtesans do? They would have live musicians. So we found this dude that was willing to come and play violin. And then we had a chef to make things for us to eat, and other
massage therapists,
like all kinds of wonderful experiences. And then some also people trained in Tantra or the practice of, domination and submission to, facilitate experiences for us so we could just expand our enjoyment of our bodies and our lives. So that's how it came to be, was really inspired by women who have stood for pleasure in remarkable ways historically. And then I was like, all right, let's see what we can make happen now. And it's been going on for a few years and it's been amazing. And ever expanding and ever changing.
Yeah. And we just had one last night. We hosted at our apartment. And the thing that I love so much about it is the laughter. Like it's this like giggling like children and the deepening of the friendships that happen. And just to be able to swim in each other's life force, to be able to swim in each other's eros.
Right. And have a place to hold space for each other's ongoing ruptures and raptures.
Ooh.
Because as each of us, the journey of living your desire is it is quite an adventure. And it's not like it's all happiness and rose petals. You get broken and remade by your desires. And so we have each held space for one another in witnessing that over and over and over again, so many parts of each other's adventures. And this was also, I had so much influence from the courtesans because courtesans really stood for one another and sistered one another and would help a new courtesan with promise into the fold, and open doors for her. And sometimes a younger courtesan would look after an older one who was no longer able to sustain or support herself. Like it was a sisterhood. And so part of that is something that we've been deepening and creating. And
even in that, like I've had many courtesan chambers where, surrounded with, drowning in abundance of just an abundance of food, an abundance of friendship, an abundance of great music. And then almost in the safety of that, in the beauty of that, I feel safe enough to sort of to shed a version of myself or to have
fall
the rupture or to die a version of me.
Yes.
And I felt that the collective power of that eros, of that turn on, could handle the bigness of whatever it was that I was grieving.
Yeah.
And just last night, our friend went through a portal and then I went through a portal.
Yeah.
And I think what feels fascinating and what I want to speak about, because I think you're so uniquely gifted at this, and this is one of the ways that you've changed my life the most, is when you're tapped into that turn on, you actually are so much more resilient and so much braver to go into the darkness, to go into the depth of the pain, because you know that you're not going to live there. Like you know that the turn on can hold you and be transmuted. Yeah. And we watched it happen last night again and again. It was like deep portals into feverish giggles.
Yes.
And this, in your practice of swamping, right, where you just invite people to go right into the rage, right into the sorrow, and then transmute it with the turn on. So can you speak about that?
Well, if you think about it, we see that women are cyclical. we bleed, we menstruate, we ovulate. There's, we go through menopause. Like we live secular lives. It is not one constant note. And the earth as well, right? We're stepping into fall right now. So the leaves are starting to change color, fall from the trees. Like it's the cycle of all of that life turning to mulch, falling off. And soon here, in New York, it will be winter, where everything is, there's no life. And so that cycle lives inside every woman. And just like every desire is a seed that then grows, and then its cycle ends, and then a new desire begins. It's our culture has a tendency to try to reduce everybody. When somebody says, "How are you, Emily?" What are you supposed to say?
I'm fine.
Fine.
Good.
Fine. Yeah. And nobody's ever fine. Never. You're never fine. Like, what is fine? Fine is, what is it? It's not a thing. Like, you're either, a little cranky, stayed up last night too late, or you're kind of giggly because you just were flirting with somebody, or you're feeling really stressed about a deadline, or your kid just did something crazy and you're like wondering if you're a good mom. Like, you're something, but we are culturated to reduce ourselves to fine. It's kind of like playing middle C when you have like a full range of a piano keyboard of 88 keys and we're not playing all the notes. So what I have found is the more connected that I get to my pleasure, because pleasure there's so many, the experience of pleasure can be, like it's fun to have like really wild, crazy sensual experiences and very sacred, holy sexual experiences, and and above and beyond all of that. So what I have found is the more women can tune into their sensuality, their pussies, the more alive their whole being becomes, where they become able to feel righteous about expressing their rage that might have been repressed, or expressing their jealousy, or expressing their reverence and their joy and their enthusiasm. There's like an unleashed quality that happens when a woman takes ownership of her turn on and her pussy and her life.
So this is different than I've ever heard you talk about it. You're saying like once you're tuned in to your own power source, right? To your own like your own turn on, that is the thing that lets you feel brave enough or entitled enough to even express all 88 keys. Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, I don't know if you were ever this, but before I tuned into pussy, if I went on a date with somebody, maybe I was chatty at dinner, but then if it turned out like that person, we ended up, being sensual with each other, I wouldn't say anything in bed. I would just like be there and like wait for my partner to kind of tell me what we were about to do. And I wouldn't even connect that much to what I wanted or not. I didn't even know that was sort of an option to say or I didn't even know what I wanted, because I certainly never had done any research with myself or my body. But once I really learned to come, and I really learned about my orgasm, and I learned about my 8,000 nerve endings dedicated to pleasure, my clitoris, I really dove into the study of orgasm for many, many years. Then suddenly I was free everywhere. I would just, I could get shit done, like boom. It wasn't that I wasn't shy anymore, but I lost my ability to contain and to restrain my truth. And so I said my truth.
Oof, I lost my ability to restrain my truth when I turned into my turn on.
Yeah.
Wow. And so the thing I wanted to talk about is when I've heard you facilitate swamping before. So swamping, my understanding is that you're inviting people to move and express and to be witnessed in rage, sorrow, whatever is alive for them.
All the
whatever
dark emotions that we disapprove of.
And then I think you say you transmute it with your turn on.
Yeah.
And I love the analogy where like rage is like a dirty burning fuel.
Fossil fuels,
like polluting the
Raw
planet.
rage. Yeah.
Powerful, but dirty.
Yeah.
And that if you can mix in that pleasure, that orgasm, that turn on, that it turns into clean burning energy.
Yes.
And where this feels, because I know you're such a huge environmentalist and an activist and always really fighting for Mother Earth and doing so through changing the consciousness of the species, because we are the ones, running that ship right now to some degree. So anyway, I have a theory, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I can't wait. I'm excited.
That because we as a society are sort of disconnected from our darker emotions, we've not been trained how to feel them. We've been told to shh since we were babies. That because we've not been equipped to go into the soil, into the dirt, into the compost, we don't know what to do with that. We don't know how to turn that stuff into soil. We don't know how to use it to complete the cycle. Like you said, we're cyclical. Yeah. And I think that's showing up in the 3D. We don't want to look at our waste. We just want to put our plastic in the ocean and send our trash and our clothes to the countries that can't say no. We just keep making more and more and more of it, but we don't want to look at it, and we don't know how to upcycle it.
Right.
We don't know how to take that shit and turn it into gold. Yeah. And I feel like your practice of swamping is so genius because you teach people how to alchemize shit into gold, shit into fertilizer that can then grow not only their dreams, but the planet that they want. And so I would just love to, maybe you could share some examples of transformations that people have had from learning how to process these more intense emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's first of all, every single one of us is holding, so much grief, so much heartbreak, so much. There was a woman who was in my class who she was on the verge of a divorce, and that's why she came. And she and her husband had just a terrible sex life. They didn't connect sensually at all, and they blamed each other. They had a little 5-year-old kid at that time. So she started to she took a program that I was teaching live called Mastery. And she started to learn about the beauty of her own body and the beauty of her own pussy. And she learned that, that she was, she who bleeds but does not die and gives life, that is woman. And it started to change her relationship with her body. And then she learned how to swamp, which is all of the frustration, the heartbreak that relationship had not turned out. Seemed it was on the verge. She had just put the deposit of $5,000 for the divorce lawyer. And the rage, the heartbreak, the devastation of not being met, not being understood. And then she flew home between weekends. Once she was home, she kept thinking, wow, it's interesting. Because I never loved myself, I never let my husband love me. And in fact, I never even let him look at me. Whenever we had sex, it was totally in the dark. I would not let him turn the light on.
Wow.
So she told him, it was so brave. She's like, okay, I want to go on a date with you. When we come back from the date, we'll go to dinner, we'll go dancing, and then we come back from the date. I want you to look at my pussy for the first time. And he's like, whoa. I would love to do that. So they go on the date, and then they even they don't even ever go dancing. She says, no, come home. I'll dance for you. So they get home, and she's so nervous, and she's sitting in the car, and I don't know. And then he goes inside, and then she comes in after him, and then she does a little strip tease for him. And then she gets on the bed, and then he said, I will be right back. And he comes back with a headlamp. Like a camping headlamp. So the whole bedroom was dark, and except for him with this little headlamp. And he, very first time, spread her legs, looked at her pussy, and they're both weeping. Just weeping with reverence and with love. And it changed everything. She got her deposit back from the lawyer, and they were able to find their way because she was finally able to let him in. And that's all he wanted, was to be let in. So that combination of learning to love your body and then learning to move through all the stuck, angry bits and the hurts through embodiment of swamping shifted everything so the two of them could actually connect in the way they longed for.
Wow.
So it's powerful. It's a powerful practice.
It's moved things for me. I remember when we closed our studio here in Ziva, we had a physical location in Soho, and you came with me on the last day before we tore it down, and you let me just express physically and with my body the sadness and the pride and the grief and the rage and all of it. And it was such a gift that you gave me.
It was so good.
And just that light, the image of the man with the headlamp, it just inspires me to tell a story. So when we first started living together, I was reading your books. I was like, maybe I should read your book. People say it's really good. Maybe I should get to know this woman. And I'm on chapter 2, and you're telling the story about how you had invited a couple to New York City to do a workshop on extended massive orgasm. Yeah. And it's like you've got people from your PTA. It's in your living room in New York City, and they were going to do a demonstration, and then the woman got sick, and then you ended up having to be the pussy model. Yeah. So I'm on chapter 2. I'm reading the book, and this is the same day that my boyfriend Adam has invited us to Austin, and we're facilitating for a men's group there. So 40 silverback gorilla dudes, just like alpha bros in Texas. Yeah. And you said, you're like, I just need a massage table and a pussy model. We're like, great, I got you. Mm-hmm. So we had a massage table, we had a pussy model. And then halfway through, I'm looking around and I'm like, where's the model? And she's gone.
She left.
She had dated someone in that room. She did not feel comfortable. And so she pieced out. Now, Luna May, our fellow sister and facilitator, was dancing, was on her moon cycle, and said already that she did not want to be the model. Yeah. So that left me as the only person left in the room with a pussy. You. And so I reached out to Adam and I was like, hey, come here. I was like, are you comfortable with me being the model? Because this is your men's group. Like, I just wanted to check in with him. And he was like, he thought about it and he said, yes. And so next thing, I'm on the table, you're facilitating your brilliance, you're training these men how to honor, how to acknowledge, how to celebrate this portal of the entire species, this matrix point for the planet with the reverence that it deserves. And Adam, my partner, is shining the flashlight from his phone onto my pussy with this room full of men. And actually, I think that was one of the most, for me, like one of the most profound moments was his level of reverence and his level of devotion and literally shining a light on me in a room full of men who are working to let go of that patriarchy, working to let go of that misogyny, working to let go of that like property of like, this is my woman. Yeah. To have Adam in such reverence, literally shining a light on me while you were facilitating was such a beautiful image that was really an initiation for me. So thank you.
Oh my God. It was so beautiful. And that is like the thing that really distinguishes him is his devotion to you. Like, oh, whoa. I mean, wow. It's so beautiful. It's like what every woman longs for, and so challenging to let in that much love. You're doing great, baby. You're doing great.
But I think that's an important point, is like we can only receive love to the degree to which we love ourselves. Yes. And if you don't love yourself, how on earth could you receive the love from your partner? And I think that is one of the gifts that 16 years of meditation has given me, is that I now see myself as so much divine, and I can feel God in me, that to not love myself would be to not love God. Yeah. And because it's less, I mean, certainly there's ego and self-hatred and all that is still there, but the percentage has shifted. Yeah. Right? I feel more connected to source than I do attached to the Emily Fletcher ego. Great. And I think because of that, it's increased my capacity to receive this devotion. And he really, I think, is in reverence to the divine feminine. I think he's actually devoted to the goddess. And I am the lucky recipient of that devotion to the goddess. And it just feels really unique, and I feel excited to just even naming that in the world feels like important, like an interesting archetype for us to explore.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I'm thinking about Peter, and I would say... So
that's Regina's amazing partner.
And I would say he is similarly devoted to the goddess. And And to me, he just has like a deep, he just deeply loves and reveres woman. And yeah, we have, I am very lucky. It was hard for me to receive all that love at the beginning, but I'm hanging in there.
You're not hanging in there, Regina.
All right, I'm scooping it up right now.
Yeah,
I am chowing down.
Well, you've been through, talk about like leaning into the darkness to make space for more light. Like the past few years have been a real portal for you. And I want to celebrate you and honor you because your bravery to feel the intensity of all of it, ending your engagement, falling in love with someone else, getting back together, him having another partner. Like it's been this wild drama of twists and turns that sometimes has been heartbreaking and sometimes been ecstatic. And watching you go through this and your just ability to lean all the way in to whatever is alive for you without making it bad or wrong or minimizing it or shoulding yourself, but using the tools that you've been cultivating and teaching has been such an honor to witness. That even on your darkest weeks, even in your darkest days where you were so heartbroken, that you would still do these practices and come out radiant.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fake.
No.
It wasn't putting a happy face sticker on top of an empty tank of gas. Like you would go in, you would feel it, and you would fill yourself up. And it was nothing short of miraculous.
Oh, thank you. I am very disciplined around my radiance. Like, I think that it's the only way that I can stay connected with my divinity is by connecting with my radiance.
And how do you define radiance?
It's my turn on, and here's the interesting thing. Like when you think about turn on, you think that it has to do with happy emotions, but it really doesn't. It's allowing that sensual energy to flow in your body for your own, and I'm kind of grinding on my chair as I'm saying this because it kind of helps me connect, but it's allowing that life force to flow, not on behalf of another, on behalf of me. It's like me using that fuel. And so there's erotic in grief. There's erotic in rage. There's erotic in jealousy. And when I find that everything about my life is so much more alive and meaningful and connected to my divinity when I'm plugged into my turn on.
Okay, so I feel very sold on tapping into turn on. Like I'm like, I get it.
You get it.
So now why isn't everyone doing it? Like I want to learn more about like your study of the ancient goddess practices. And then I'm also very interested in why we aren't doing it. Like why was this taken from us? Why did we forget?
Okay, first of all, I think the why, I'm not about the why because I don't think you can really track back to that moment when everything shifted. What I'm about is like finding the roots that are still available and, they're resources from which we can draw, right? For example, if you and I lived in ancient Egypt and it was planting season, maybe we would be asked to circle the field, flash our pussies at the ground that had been planted, and invoke the wheat to grow as high as my pussy. And all the women would flash their pussies at the wheat field and invoke the wheat to grow. Like, how amazing is that? And how brilliant is that? To use the life force of the feminine to empower the soil, because we are all one. There's a story about in 2 BC, the philosopher Pliny wrote about a battle that Persian soldiers were losing to the Romans. And so they came running back home, and the women stood at the gates of the city, and they flashed their pussies at the guys, and they said, "You get back there, dudes, and you fight that war, and you win that war." And boom, they did. They went right back.
It's sort of like the anti-Lysistrata.
It's totally. It was like how we used our life force to power. Women would flash in the ancient Catalan, the women would flash their pussies at the ocean to bring back their sailors who went fishing, calm seas. So they'd flash their pussies to invoke calm seas. I actually had a student in my last virtual pleasure boot camp. She, when she was a little girl in India, there was a monsoon threatening the crops. And her grandmother, when she was like literally 2 years old, lifted her up to the heavens, exposed her little tiny 2-year-old pussy to the sky to prevent the monsoon from destroying their crops.
Wow.
Like, how cool is that? To have been that 2-year-old child where you knew, like, oh shit, I am that powerful. I can stop the monsoon. Like, every woman has that power and we don't access it.
So, but do you think it's because of that power? It's because of the power that we've been divorced from it? Like, how do we get from that of like understanding the manifesting power, the crop growing power, the divinity, the sanctity of this portal, this matrix point? How do we go from there to thinking like, oh, I'm going to go to hell if I touch myself?
Well, I think that's where you have the patriarchal culture and the patriarchal religions. It used to be that we would worship the feminine alongside the masculine. That it wasn't about, as we were talking the other day, monotheism. It was about, there was so many gods and goddesses, and that were, the portal of life was the feminine, and the feminine was worshipped. And then when, about 5,000 years ago, with the rise of Christianity and Islam and Judaism, the feminine was kind of eliminated from the temples. And we have this incredible imbalance now. It's almost like, the antidote to patriarchy is not matriarchy. It's not women taking over. It's a balance between masculine and feminine, because right now, patriarchy is kind of like a bird flying around with one wing and just flies in circles. And we need that feminine wing to power up so that we can together create a future that we both want to inhabit. If when the feminine is eliminated, it's not good for men either. It's hurtful and damaging to the masculine as well. So I don't know the why point, but I know there was a day and there was a time when goddess sat alongside God. And that is not now, but it doesn't mean that those truths are not still alive in our bodies and our beings. And if I'm about to have a really important meeting or go on stage somewhere in front of a crowd, I will, swipe my pussy, invoke my divinity, put a little pussy juice behind my ears, swipe the stage I'm about to step on, and stand in the fullness of my feminine power. Like, I take that ancient technology and I work it into my life right now.
Yes.
It's
yes.
The best.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so I know that people are going to be so excited and curious about knowing more of your work. I will vouch and just really recommend that everyone read your New York Times best-selling book, Pussy, A Reclamation. Thank you for bringing this word back into the zeitgeist with the reverence and honor that it deserves. Like one of the first paragraphs where you say, this beautiful portal, this sacred feminine, and now we've reduced it to the most insulting insult in the English language.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've empowered an entire generation of women to start to say it again, to start to love themselves and their own sex again is such a service to humanity. And I'm so inspired by you.
Thank you.
And so if people want to work with you, learn more about you, where should they go? How can they do that?
They can play with me on Instagram.
Okay.
At, Mama Gena on Instagram.
Gena.
Yeah, MAMAGENA. Or I have a gorgeous website, www.mamagenas, You can join my newsletter. I write gorgeous blogs.
Gorgeous.
And find out what's going on. The next class that I'm teaching is going to be Virtual Pleasure Boot Camp coming up.
Let's just talk about that pleasure boot camp. Like,
Yeah.
that's so awesome that you're taking like a military structure. You said you're very disciplined about your radiance.
I am military about my pleasure.
Yeah, and it shows. I mean, just to give you another plug, I see you. I see the way that you work out. I see the way that you eat. I see, and the thing is that
Did
a
I
lot
make
of
us all eat at home?
Yes, but I think if other person was following your health regimen, they might feel like it was stringent or
Really? Feels so lush.
But that's because you fill it with joy, right? Like you make these beautiful fresh salads for us every day from this place of generosity and creativity and love. And you work out almost every day with love and joy and pleasure. And you help facilitate these monthly meetups where our friends get together and nourish ourselves with fun and play and joy. And so to have such a beautiful regimen of such a beautiful boot camp about the thing that you find most sacred and that you're infusing it with the joy and delightfulness is such a testament to who you are. And what I always tell people is like, I'm 44, you're many years older than me, and you can do more pull-ups than me. You're having more sex than I am. You're writing more feverishly than I am. Like and helping take care of my 5-year-old son. Like it's just truly like a wild testament to what is possible when you are tapped into your turn on.
Thank you for that reflection, because like I don't think of I don't think about it outside of myself. I'm just like, just like another day to seize and grab and enjoy and cherish.
Yeah. And it's a testament to your turn on, your radiance.
Thank you. And I feel likewise so grateful to live with you and also to be part of you as you're evolving the work that you're doing in the world and taking more risks, because all of us can remain static and stay in place when we hit a certain level of success. But you don't do that. You're like, let's blow it all up and keep growing, and as you grow, then everyone whose lives you touch gets to grow and expand. It's really powerful to see that. But that's really the potent, almost like pleasure is like being an actual quantum physicist. You know how like when what we create will manifest. Like, and when you are manifesting, or when you are in a place of pleasure, it up levels the frequency of your ability to live into the life that you actually long for so powerfully, and it's so it's free. You don't have to like spend money to have pleasure, or buy Botox to fix your face, or get a boob job to be hot. You could just plug into your turn on, and then you are gorgeous and you are irresistible, and it doesn't matter how old you are or the shape of your body. It's such an internal game that completely changes your experience on this planet.
Lit from within, tapped into that creation energy from within. So let's just all imagine a world with 8 billion people tapped into their own hoo-has, inclusive of all genders, and all remembering just how divine their own turn-on is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, thank you so much for joining me. You're love
welcome. Yeah, I love you too. So good, baby.
All right, sweet friends, thank you so much for joining us on this very, very special, very joyous, very turned on, lit up episode of Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? If you have loved this, I would be so grateful if you will take a screenshot, post it on Instagram, tag both of us. I'm at Ziva Meditation. She's at Mama Gena. And let us know. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Let us know if you have questions about this work. We want to connect with you. So I love you all, and I'll see you next week.